Warm greetings from the high 10. It is Everyday Shenanigans, and thanks for joining me. I want to thank Miss Beatrice. Thank you so much for the donation. God bless you, and thank you for the said information. Prayers to the Petito family. It has been said that the young lady, Miss Gabby, her remains have been discovered. So prayers for this family and prayers for justice for this said young lady. Tonight's discussion will be pertaining to those said persons who are transgender, and I will be bringing you just a little bit of short information pertaining to issues that have occurred pertaining to those said parties that are living this lifestyle. And I'm going to play you audio this evening. Hello, how are you doing, sweetheart? We'll be playing audio, so I won't be able to engage at the moment because I will be playing audio pertaining from the Dr. Phil show. This is not my content that I will be playing. But it's just to give you a little synopsis of something I found in the queue, and I wanted to share it with the audience because I have discussed this subject a couple of months ago. And if people can be respectful and follow continuity of the subject, I'll be glad to drop the link. If not, I'll just give my commentary, and I'll check out of here. Thanks for joining me. Here we go. Hold on. 1 second. Trying to play the commercials if they have music in them. So
that I supported a pro-life president. You have to accept the fact.
One of you ever sent me those?
Please let her finish. Online, they got the video. I sent it in. When you were online talking about me, you said I'm a dumb Trump supporting bitch. That's what you said. To be condemned for supporting the candidate of your choice. I don't believe in killing babies.
Imagine being condemned for loving the person of your choice.
Transitioning children. It's not about loving the person of your choice. It's about your behavior, and it's about the fact that you want to force me to believe that the son that I gave birth to is a woman. I don't feel like I have to partake in that delusion.
That's not what
Excuse me,
about.
I'm not done.
That's
well, you have to be done at some point. You have to let someone else speak.
Regardless of
why are you talking about it?
Regardless of if you believe JV and
You're a trans activist and first trans woman to become editor-in-chief of a national publication and first openly trans person to run for state office in California. Now, she says Angela's fear of seeing JBs with a handbag is going to put JBs in a body bag. And the reason that she's saying this, in my opinion, is really just looking at the statistics of the pressure and the depression and the high suicide rate among those that live in this community. And she's joining us now. Thank you so much for being here again. It's been a while since I've seen you.
Thank you for having me.
You've been listening to all of this. Help us out here, Ashley Marie.
I think it's heartbreaking all the way across the board. Because Angela may not know this, but I know that she started following me in 2018. So part of me knows that despite what she's saying about how she's not going to be convinced otherwise, she is invested in understanding not just her daughter, but the transgender community. You may be able to dominate the dialogue, but you will not control the outcome of the message that we spread today.
You cannot yell people down and win.
It's not yelling people down. You have to allow other people on this show that's gonna try to tell me my son is a woman. My son is not a woman.
No, mommy, no.
That. You can get all the transgenders in the world. He's not a woman.
If you're secure in your belief, let someone else speak. You're being very disrespectful.
But you want me to listen to
somebody that's telling me my son is a woman. I'm not asking you to do anything except allow someone else to speak.
Please hear me, because believe it or not, contrary to what you may think or believe, I'm rooting for both of you. I am invested in the relationship that you have with your daughter because according to
you can't
survey,
you can't be because hold on. You can't be interested in me and him having a relationship because first you're disrespecting me as a parent.
I am not disrespecting you.
I feel as though
I am not disrespecting you. I gave you credit for your what you're doing. No, you're not.
When you tell me that this is my daughter, you tell me that this is my daughter.
You're bulldozing. I'm not telling you anything. I'm acknowledging who she is.
You're not.
I'm not calling her. is about honoring and respecting her personhood.
You're irrelevant.
According to
That doesn't matter to me.
Parenting, can we please?
So according to, I wanted
Go
to
ahead. I
Okay.
asked you to come here,
Okay.
and I'm going to give you the respect that you
Okay.
deserve. I asked you to come here, and I'm not going to let you get shouted down. Say what you would like to say.
So according to a study that was done by the National Center for Transgender Equality and the National LGBTQ Task Force, so when there is a parent or parents or loved ones in the home who do not support the identity of the transgender individual, 51% have attempted suicide, 48% have become homeless, 47% have become addicted to drugs and substances, and 29% have actually had to engage in sex work.
You're not going to guilt me into accepting him as a woman because you feel like if he makes a bad decision, that it's going to be my fault. If he were to listen to me, I wouldn't have to worry about those things. Because let's talk about some of those numbers that you mentioned. Even when Joe Biden, during his presidential debate, was talking about legalizing young children transitioning, he said his reason was because so many transgender women of color had been murdered. And he said, I think the number now is up to 17. Now, as a leader in the Black community, there are thousands of Black men that have been murdered. But you won't hear Joe Biden talk about that because those Black men did not have a wig on. So I'm not going to elevate. Excuse me. I'm not done.
Politics.
I'm not going to elevate. I'm not going to elevate the issue of transgenderism over Black men because at the end of the day, y'all still Black men.
Gender identity is who I go to bed as, and sexual orientation is who I go to bed with. So the fact that you're making assumptions about children's genitals or your child's genitals, that is way out of bounds. At this moment, you have a decision to make as to whether you're willing to do the internal work to silence that inner critic that's making you force your children to carry your shame.
Okay, no,
We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. Do you have?
Okay, that's episode. It's not they've got divided in clips in the queue on YouTube. This one is Mother says all the transgenders in the world won't convince her that her son is blah blah blah. So I'm going to go to the next one. This is where her daughter is speaking pertaining to the relationship, I guess, with the parents. The title of this one is Sister of Trans Woman Tells Their Mom to Stop Bulldozing Them. Hold on 1 second. Let's see if we can get this started.
This app will change your life.
1 minute. Try to get all the commercials out of there.
I understand that Javian likes to dress up. He likes the way that he transformed. I mean, I've seen pictures of Javian and he is absolutely stunning. I've been taken aback by some of the photos that I've seen because he was so beautiful. He always looked like his mom, kind of like my twin. I don't know what I'm seeing, man. That's why I'm here today. Maybe you guys can help me figure it out.
Angela says that JB's has warped Imani's mind into thinking dressing like a female is okay. You're concerned about the influence,
Yes.
right? And does she need to be concerned about influence here? You seem to be very self-possessed.
Right. I am very outspoken and very opinionated in my own right about things like gender identity and how she should parent, because bullying your children emotionally and calling them all types of names is not preparing your child for life. That's only going to damage them. And I don't understand why, as a parent, you cannot realize that fact.
So I would say that you have done very extremely well. I've raised you on my own. Children are different, okay? You and Javian were not the same children, okay? Y'all didn't have the same struggles. Y'all didn't have the same issue. So your upbringing is going to be different.
I do want to acknowledge that you've done a lot of things right. And I say that because sitting next to you is a very fine example. It's doing very well, as you say. I think I would say the same thing sitting across from you here. There are a lot of really fine qualities here that you have to respect. There's a strength of character here, a conviction, and a lot of the strength has to come from the role model that you provided of conviction and standing up for yourself. You've done a lot of things right along the way, and I hope you're proud of that, and I hope you're proud of a lot of the strength and conviction that you see sitting next to you and across from you. I hope that, as Ashley Marie is saying, that you would want to be a source of strength for both of your children, whether these two children, whether that you agreed with everything either of them chose in their lives or whether you didn't.
This show isn't about I don't love you. I love you.
I don't.
Well, you don't have to, but I'm telling you. So you'll hear it from me, and so the whole world will hear it. I love my son, Javian. And what I want you to understand is that so this is what you don't get. I think that
I'm the one that don't get
I think that these feelings are going both ways. No. I think that you feel like you don't have a mom, and I feel like I don't have a son. When you were telling me that this is you now, you don't understand that I want my son. Like, you're taking somebody away from me. You don't want to be my son, but you want me to be your mother.
I don't want you to be my mother.
Okay, but I still want you to be my son.
Well,
so then make the necessarily changes to make it that way.
So change
it's that simple.
What changes are going to be made?
Maybe stop trying to bulldoze us and dismiss our emotions like you have done on this stage.
It's not about trying to bulldoze you or dismiss your emotions. It's the fact that I'm not going to let anybody tell me that my son is a woman.
Just outside
you bulldoze. You even with me.
I've never asked her to call me a woman, and that's one of her main argument points. She can't name one.
You just told me call you JB's. Who is JB's?
JB's. That's my name. That's what I go by.
Did you change it?
I'm about to.
Okay.
Do you have a?
Okay, that's one of the second videos I played. The young lady that you heard talking, that's the younger daughter, and as you see, she's basically saying, "Well, you do me the same way." So the mother is very dominant. Her name just so happened to be Angela. Lord have mercy. She's a conservative, and they obviously have some issues. I'm going to play one more clip, and then I'll go into the commentary. Thank you for joining me. One moment. Thanks. This one says, trans woman says her mom doesn't accept her.
I don't think my mother is very accepting of me or my lifestyle. I would technically identify under the queer or question. The Q can kind of go both ways. As long as I can remember, I've always been called like gay or like queer or like a or stuff like that. I didn't want to play sports. I wanted to play with Barbies. I like long hair. I like pretty lashes. I like things that come in pink. I just like pretty things. I think it bothered my mom that my entire life I was different. I think my mother is a huge bigot. If it's not Angela's way, it's just completely wrong. Angela pushes her conservative agenda down everybody's throat. She wants to choke people on her beliefs. If you're not agreeing with what she agrees with, then your opinion doesn't matter. My mom has called me the worst of the worst. You're going to hell, you're going to die of AIDS. She can be extremely intolerant to other people's opinions and how they feel. And even on her social media, she's showcased her bigoted ways very clearly. I actually have turned me being a live streamer into a very lucrative 6-figure career. I'm pretty sure Angela probably is ashamed of me, but I don't care. I'm ashamed of a lot of the things she does as well. We're probably an embarrassment to each other.
What are you? Have a seat. Your mother and I have had some difference of opinion already.
I can probably guess what she said.
Yeah. Now, you say that sometimes your mother is supportive of you. She says things to you that are supportive, but then she reverses her field and doesn't behave that way and has made really negative tweets and statements publicly.
Yeah, it's very up and down, up and down. Like one day it's, I love you and I'm not going to hurt you no more. And then the next day, it's the random tweets or you see me dressed up. I've been, playing in makeup since I was like 13. This isn't anything new. So,
well, some of the tweets that you've posted, you said, if you want a little boy to look like a woman, you might just be a pedophile and don't know it.
It's because there's a trending thing online that says boys can be princesses too. And in this thing, you see little boys dressed up as grown women. They've got on gowns, they got on heels, they got on lipstick. Me, I'm a survivor of sexual abuse. Anytime I've ever put on a gown and high heels and lipstick, it's because I was trying to be sexy or have some sort of sex appeal. It's something that women do. So to suggest that a little boy, and it clearly says little boy, 5, 6, or 7 years old should be walking around dressed up like a grown woman. And if you look at it and like it, you might just be a pedophile and don't know it.
LGBTQIA defines adults by their sexual preference. Now they're trying to convince us that it's okay to look and define children the same way. You a lie. I refuse to look at a child and tie them to a sexual preference or desire.
Exactly. Each one of those letters represents a sexuality. We should not be sexualizing children. I don't want to lose my son.
Do you think your child has the right to self-define, to have a mind not controlled by mother?
He absolutely has a right to do that, but he also has a right to respect me as his parent. And it's not about hate, it's love. I just don't have to accept my son as a woman.
It is hate. I think
you believe it's hate because I'm not doing what you want me to do.
It's not about you doing what. It's not about at all about you doing what I want you to do.
Told you that I hated you?
It's about you might as well lose. Okay. So let's take the whole dressing as a woman thing out of it. Let's say that I was sitting across from you, the perfect son you could have imagined. Some of the things you have said to me are hateful.
She said to you, I hope you burn in hell.
Yeah.
When I said that?
She said you're gonna burn in hell.
When did I say that?
Several times. I have the text messages.
Please show the text message. I've never said that.
Has she said you'll end up dead just like your father?
She did say
That's not what I said.
She did
quote it.
By the way, I'm very sorry for your loss, both of you.
Thank you.
She isn't sorry for my loss. My dad was brutally murdered. If we're going to talk about it, let's go ahead and talk about it. My dad was brutally murdered. He was shot in the head. When he got shot in the head, he hit the pedal on the gas. The car crashed. My dad burned alive in a car. 2 days after this, my mother was on social media. A person of some famous stature had tweeted some condolences about my dad. Angela then goes on her Instagram. We good. We don't need your condolences.
What I came here for, right, is for us to try to find some type of peace and solace to be able to move forward.
Peace and solace of what?
First, we have to be honest.
I quite frankly don't think you care about me.
We have to be honest.
Nothing.
I don't think you care about me.
Can I get a turn to speak?
I don't think you care about me.
Do you have a story or a question for me? Click.
All right, that's Dr. Phil. If you need a source, these said clips are in the YouTube queue. If you need verification for the said information, if you'd like to watch all of the clips that have been available, a lot of these TV programs do not have the entire episode, so they put them in clips, which can be very annoying because you don't know which order they are in. And I want to thank you all for joining me. I'm already several minutes into this information. I'm going to bring you a little bit of short information pertaining to transgender persons. Hold on one second. Oh, no. Okay. This is by hrc.org. Fatal violence against the transgender and gender non-conforming community in 2021. Sadly, 2021 has already seen at least 36 transgender or gender non-conforming people fatally shot or killed by other violent means. We say at least because too often these stories go unreported or misreported. In previous years, the majority of these people were Black and Latino transgender women. In 2020, HRC tracked a record number of violent fatal incidents against transgender and gender non-conforming people. A total of 44 fatalities were tracked by HRC, marking 2020 as the most violent year on record since HRC began tracking these crimes in 2013. These victims, like all of us, are loving partners, parents, family members, friends, and community members. They worked, went to school, and attended houses of worship. They were real people who did not deserve to have their lives taken from them. As HRC continues to work toward justice and equality for transgender and gender nonconforming people, we mourn those we have lost in 2021. As it stated, 44 fatalities tracked by HRC in 2020. I have a list of the names. I can't read all the things that they had going on and because it's too many to read, but I will give off a few little short bios on a few of the people, and you're welcome to go into the hrc.org to verify this source that I'm bringing to you of information. I'm going to read the first name, Tyanna Alexander, who was also known as Devaria Alexander, was a 28-year-old Black trans woman. Tyanna was shot to death in Chicago on January 6th. On social media, friends of Tyanna posted that she had good energy and had a beautiful life, with one friend saying, "I loved everything about her." Said another friend, "This lady was nothing but life, encouragement, motivation, and fun." Samuel Edmund Damian Valentin, a transgender man, was killed on January 9th in Trujillo Alto, Puerto Rico. Samuel was looking forward to starting a new year. On January 1st, he posted on his Facebook, "A new year to come. Grateful for all the experiences who taught me how strong we really are to life, to good and bad, and for all justice that is forth to come. He also spoke out against violence in Puerto Rico, expressing his hope for Puerto Rico without killings. Bianca Muffin Banks, a Black transgender woman who was shot to death in Atlanta, Georgia on January 17th. On Friday, January 29th, Bianca's friends and the Trans Housing Coalition, THC, held a vigil outside of her apartment to remember her. Said THC's founder and co-director, Jesse Pratt Lopez, Muffin was just blossoming into herself. Dominique Jackson, a Black transgender woman, was shot to death in Jackson, Mississippi on January 25th. According to her Facebook, Dominique was the mother of the House of Red and the founder of the Laddie Red Inc. Friends are remembering her on social media, with one saying, "My heart is heavy and nothing sharing. I'm at a loss for words." Another was sharing, "I'm at a loss for words." 50 Bands, a 21-year-old Black transgender woman, was shot to death in Baton Rouge, Louisiana on January 28th. Friends of 50 Bands and advocates said her name as they released balloons to remember her life. On Facebook, one friend shared, "When are we as a community going to do something?" Okay, here's another one. Alexis Braxton, also known as Kimmy Icon Braxton, a 45-year-old Black trans woman, was killed on February 4th in Miami. Braxton was a hairstylist and active on social media, posting regularly. One of her most recent posts said, "They cannot stop my shine." Family and friends held a balloon release to honor Alexis' life on February 8th and have been remembering her on social media, with one saying, "I'm beyond devastated." The list goes on with different persons who have lost their lives, who were transgender people. I brought you this information because the mother made mention of not wanting her child to be dismembered, which was a very heavy wording to use when Dr. Phil was talking to the mother about her said adult child. This is an adult child that we were speaking of in this said commentary. She could have just said, "I don't want my child harmed." Like I said, I brought this information because she mentioned that in this said episode. Also, there's a known fact that many transgender people end up in very life-threatening situations, and some have lost their lives, as this piece here gives out the names of people who lost their lives violently. Truth, live your truth is probably the best advice I can give to anyone, no matter who you are. You need to be honest with all said people. I do not know the circumstances of all these decedents, but I do know that if you're not truthful about who you are and underneath your clothing, it possibly can cost you your life, because a lot of people, I am sure of, are not being honest about who they are. Because you see, it's more than just dressing up in the clothes and saying, "This is who I am, and I identify with the opposite sex." You also have to be truthful about who you are. You cannot go out here and mislead people, because I think a lot of people who've gotten hurt could possibly have been misleading people. Not all circumstances, but that was alleged in one case I brought a couple months ago out of Texas. That case, it's a toss-up. I do believe the young man knew the guy was dressed up as a woman, because the roommate said he'd been over there several times. He was a regular visiting the female. So one would have to say, at some point, you had to have known that was a man underneath the clothing. There's no way you could keep visiting someone and you're liking that person, she's liking you, which is however, and you say, "Well, I didn't know, she lied to me, blah, blah, blah." This person met a very violent death by a college student. He was a football player, if I'm not mistaken, or a student at a university. So therefore, he killed her. Something jumped off and he took her life. I also brought you another story not too long ago about the football player in Virginia who went on a blind date allegedly from a dating site. And that story was also suspicious, because there are text messages and links that he's been talking to this person, and he had been there the second time allegedly when he brutally beat this man to death. Now, his family speaks otherwise of his demeanor as far as misleading anyone. They didn't have any knowledge of him being any type of, I believe, transgender person, or maybe they just thought he was gay, but not perpetrating to be something that he was not. You're welcome to check out that said video that I uploaded a few months ago. My thing is this: you could be whoever you want to be. That is your personal business, but just be truthful with people, no matter who you are. You might want to be truthful with people when talking to them about anything and who you are and what you are representing, because deception of any kind can cost you your livelihood. I think that's common sense. And this is not to say that all transgender people are living are lying to people. Let me make that clearer. Not saying that all transgender people are lying to people about who they are underneath their clothes, but there are a lot of crimes against transgender, and it doesn't necessarily even have to be that they were lying to somebody about who they are underneath their clothing. It could just be somebody assumed that's a guy dressed as a female, vice versa, and they wanted to have a little game play that day, that night, do something to them, pick them up, knowing that they're transgender. So see, it takes all kinds. We just have some very cruel people out here who don't have any focus in life, and this is what they will do. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me. Hold on 1 second. Welcome, everybody, and all new subscribers. Thank you. If you want to donate to the channel, $ Big Angie 129 Cash App. All super chats are welcome during the live. Thank you. If you've never spoken before, you're welcome to speak. There will be new people to speak on the live stream. Thank you so kindly. And as I stated early in this commentary, prayers to the Petito family. Hope you all had a great weekend. Be safe this week on your travels to work. Safety for your children. Sorry about that. That speaker was going off. It will automatically cut itself off when it realizes there's no movement going on, which that's probably a good thing. Energy saver. Okay. Since I can remember, I've known that not everyone lives the way I do, and that's okay as long as they don't hate. God apparently loves diversity. If not, he wouldn't have made us all different colors, flowers. Hello. Hey, Miss Brown, how are you doing? Thank you. Hello. Hello to you. How are you? Thank you all. If you've never spoken before, you're welcome to hit the link. I'd like to hear from some different people, give their commentary. Since I have now almost 9,000 subscribers, the Queen is shortly, roughly under 200. 200 shy of being at the 9,000 subscriber list. Amen. Thank you. Thank you for those who shared the content to get me to this new number. Amen. Thank you. That's sad information. It's a slow night tonight. That's okay. Hello, Miss Brown. How are you? Thank you. $35 viewing. Thank you. Let's see what other information I can come up with. Hello, hello, hello. Trying to find a survey or something that was recent. That's 2015. Not recent. Excuse me. Thank you. Thank you to you. Thank you so much. Hello. Hello, Andrew. How are you, honey? Okay, I'm going to read some more information. Why is anti-trans violence on the rise in America? This is by Berkeley News. And in the said commentary, there are some people standing around a memorial that was held in New York's Washington Square for Dominique Lucius, a transgender woman that was murdered in Springfield, Missouri on April 14th. This year is on pace to be the deadliest for trans and gender non-conforming people in the United States. So obviously this year has had more deaths than any year on record, which I don't know why. It's very interesting, but I'll bring you the said information. If you want to know the source, Berkeley News is the source. While the American public may have a broader understanding of the experiences of people who are transgender, non-binary, and gender non-conforming, violence against these communities in the form of killings and prejudice American policy has continued to rise. This year is on track to be the deadliest on record in America, with 29 trans and gender non-conforming people killed. At this time in 2020, which was a record-breaking year for such killings, 13 have been reported, according to the Human Rights Campaign. Though recently proposed legislation like the LGBTQ Essential Data Act aims to combat that violence by better tracking those deaths, more than 100 anti-trans bills have meanwhile been proposed this year, the most in U.S. history by conservative lawmakers. 13 of those bills have been passed. We don't want more data. We want less deaths, said Eric Stanley, an associate professor in gender and women's studies at UC Berkeley. And when you open this article, also beneath the prayer vigil, you'll see a picture of Professor Eric Stanley, who studies gender and women's studies at UC Berkeley. Trans people are positioned in relation to a normal culture that is both fascinated and repelled by us. It's not usually, I hate you, get away. It's more often, I hate you, come really close so I can terrorize you. Okay. The culture war has landed on trans communities, and that violence is especially brutal and very corporal, added Stanley. An expert in queer and trans social movements, Stanley has organized and advocated for transgender rights in the Bay Area for decades. Their book, Atmospheres of Violence, comes out this fall and delves in the contradictions and central role of racialized and gendered violence in the United States. Stanley spoke with Berkeley News about the impact that racist and colonial institutions have had on transgender communities and how the public can move forward with structural and transformational change. Mr. Stanley: there could be an increase in reporting or other factors, but what we do know is that every year since they started recording murders of trans people, we've seen an increase. But the way I think we should frame it is one person murdered is one person too many. We're currently in this time of LGBT formal equality. The troubled language of full citizenship is used to make it seem like transgender communities are no longer living through contiguous harm. Yet, at this time, along with the waves of anti-trans legislation, we still see these vicious attacks. Paying attention to this violence forces that narrative of progress back. We're in a very different space than the one that the dominant culture wants us to believe we're in. We have to remember that these beautiful people were stolen from their lives much too early, and that is a loss for us all. We must also be clear that Black, brown, and indigenous trans women continue to be hyper impacted by these and other forms of violence, but this is not to say that people remain singularly abject. These same communities are organizing to end the deadly world and create one where we might survive. So anti-trans violence is always racialized within the idiom of gender, and that's important to remember. What is the difference between violence against trans people of color versus trans people who are white? Structuring forces like anti-Blackness and colonialism produce trans as an understandable form of identity. And at the same time, it remains a place of refuge. So, of course, white trans people who are otherwise well-resourced are going to experience anti-trans violence in different and less intense ways. In terms of incarceration, Black trans people are hyper incarcerated in relation to white trans people because white people are incarcerated less than Black people. And so those same legacies of slavery and anti-Blackness that constitute policing continue within marginalized communities. It also seems important to note that the demands to abolish the police, sparked by the concentrated police killings of Black people that built momentum in the streets last summer, have seemingly been flipped upside down. We are now living in the nightmare world where, once again, increased policing is being sold as a racial justice project. And we're seeing the same thing with gender and sexuality as people argue for more police to protect trans people. But we know that's anti-ethical and would disproportionately harm Black and or trans communities. The way law enforcement records the violence against trans people is very inconsistent. Certain cities do not consider a victim's sexual orientation or gender identity. Would it be helpful to do that across the entire country? We don't want more data. We want less deaths. Sometimes data can be useful, so I'm not suggesting otherwise, but I think it's fetishized in a way where people believe the truth lies in the data, when the truth actually lies in the people's lived realities. Lawmakers will create the architecture to house data, but not the housing for low-income trans people. I would caution against this singular approach. For example, people demand the end of policing, but then are only offered the promise of more data. I think lawmakers will create the architecture to house data, but not the housing for low-income trans people. I say this in an attempt to restage the question of violence, to ask where it begins and ends, and to continue to ask what people need to thrive. What we are building is a movement against the structures that push people toward harm versus just counting them after the fact. Is there a correlation between this uptick in murders and the increase in policy being proposed to take away the rights of trans and gender non-conforming Americans? It's never just one thing. It's always a constellation of systems that are rubbing up against each other. It's racial capitalism. It's the ongoing impact of settler colonialism and imperialism. It's also the institutions of policing, imprisonment, and deportation. These are all different forms of domination situated together that produce this atmosphere of violence. So, in responding to these murders, we need to be thinking about all of those things all the time. That is hard and doesn't make for a good mainstream news story. They want a single bad person, not a whole deadly system. But most forms of anti-trans violence are specifically brutal. They're also very corporal. Trans people are positioned in relation to a normative culture that is both fascinated and repelled by us. It's not usually, I hate you, get away. It's more often, I hate you. Come really close so I can terrorize you. Trans people are positioned in relation to a normative culture that is both fascinated and repelled by us. We see this in the ways trans people are produced as props in the latest culture war. These anti-trans bills are rooted in an obsession with the idea of trans people's bodies. The politicians are authoring these bills are saying, let me study you, produce you as a singular object outside of yourself, so that I can not just terrorize you, but produce your life as a terror. This is, as I explore in my book, the other side of assimilation. But I mean, compared to 20 years ago, people have a broader understanding and lexicon of trans, non-binary, and gender non-conforming people. So there is that. And we are seeing more media visibility, but the violence is still increasing. So then, what is the relationship between visibility and violence? This is very long-winded. It's almost done. Sorry about that. Hold on 1 second. Some people argue that visibility can unfortunately create assets for people to commit more harm, but that's not exactly what I'm saying. I would want to caution against that perspective because it can place the blame of anti-trans violence on trans people. The point I want to underscore about visibility is that it does not self-evidently produce material changes. The story that the dominant culture tells us is that rights and visibility will offer a more livable life, but it's really much more nuanced than that. And it's not to say that visual and material cultures are separate. They're tightly bound, but what I'm always pushing for are structural, which is also to say epistemic changes, including the redistribution of resources and the return of stolen lands. I think that we sometimes lose track of that. Within all this sorrow, there's also the intense creativity and shattering beauty of trans life, moments where people find ways to resist and strategize for living against the perimeters of what was offered to them. Those things are really important to hold on to because this all can feel overwhelming. Miss Major Griffin Gracie has been active in revolutionary struggles for at least 50 years, and she continues to transform possibilities. She is a friend and family member that I have learned a lot from, and the kind of space that she makes for us, so many other people, is really powerful. She's somebody that gives me hope, or close as I can get to it. I think there are multiple ways to get involved, but it's important to approach the work through an understanding that the binary gender system is a product of colonism, and that trans does not only name an identity, it is also an analytic. If you're interested in supporting trans liberation, then figure out who is organizing against the street sweeps of homeless people living in Berkeley and join them. That's a trans issue. Housing, access to healthcare, position abolition, defending the West Berkeley shell mound. Those are all trans issues, not only because they impact trans people, but also because trans people are there fighting back. Working toward another world is our only way out. Attempting to reform a system like the prison industrial complex will not eliminate its violent foundations. Reforms as insurgents remind us, actually make the system bigger, make the system much deadlier, make the system more racist, more classist, and biased. You can't reform a system that is built on slavery, on indigenous genocide, on transphobia, and through all forms of degradation. We have to abolish it. So we also can't lose sight of the radical transformation that we want and need. Our collective life depends on. And this said information is by newsberkeley.education. If you need verification, Berkeley News is the source. Thank you all so much for joining me. That is the said information. It was a bit winded. Sorry about that. But I dropped the link, but obviously no one is joining, and that's fine. I'll tap out of here. But I played that audio from the Dr. Phil show because it just struck me as an interesting topic. And then once I heard the mother speak, she's very boisterous, and she didn't want anyone to give their opinion because she's adamant that she was right. She doesn't want a gay son or transgender son, however you want to word it. And she let that be known. And I don't see their relationship getting better. The only way we get better is if the mother decides she wants to just go ahead and accept her son dressing up as a woman, becoming a woman, whatsoever. The sister, the younger child, spoke very dignified in her commentary on the Dr. Phil show that you need to go to therapy. It's the only way this is going to work is if you go to therapy. And so, therefore, if the mother isn't willing to go to therapy to see about meeting her son halfway, then I don't see them ever being in a good place. It's also said in a commentary on that show that they have fought. She and her adult son have fought. Now, I do not know if this is when he was an adult or when he was a child. I didn't even catch his age because, as I stated, the queue only shows a couple of clips, and it didn't specify in the clips that I watched how old he is, but it does state that he is an adult. So my thing is, he's grown. It doesn't matter how he wants to live. That's his choice. Best thing for him to do, since it is so contentious in the household with the mother, because I don't know if he still lives with his mother and sister or not, best thing to do if he does live with her, to get out. Get out. But he said he's making 6 figures, I guess, being a social media persona. So obviously he doesn't need to live with his mother. If indeed he is or was, he can be on his own. What are you talking about, 11-year-old? I don't know what you're talking about. Anyway. Okay. Well, anyway. That's the sad information. Dr. Phil has a lot of interesting characters on his show. I was watching some very crazy nonsense yesterday pertaining to a elderly white woman who's been giving her money away to somebody on online dating app. She met some guy. She's giving away $30,000. That'll probably be my next live I do or upload. It's a very interesting topic, online dating and being catfished and giving up your goods, your monies rather, to an unknown person that you've never met, never Skype with or video chat. But then we have those who have video chatted. One black guy that's on a 90 Day Fiance, he visually saw the blonde-haired beauty and he gave her money. She's never once made it to America to come see him. But that was his choice, because at some point you had to know she was not interested. She didn't want you. And yet you still kept funneling money in her pocketbook. So that's a choice. But this subject here is a very interesting subject. As I stated, I've done a video on this, live on this many months back, pertaining to that, to the said situation. What are y'all talking about? Oh, Lordy. Well, TU, would you like to give some information? Pertaining to the commentary? Because you're welcome to give the said information if you can speak. Lord have mercy. Thank you all for joining me. TU, if you have something you want to say pertaining to the issue or the topic, you'll feel free to hit the link. If not, I'll be ending this live stream. I would say it'd have to be a terrible place to be, wanting to be somebody else, not comfortable in the body that you're in. I mean, you don't have to. I'm sure a lot of people walking around not comfortable with who they are or what they see in the mirror, and they like the opposite sex. They're attracted to the opposite sex. So everyone has their own demons to conquer. Thank you. Anyway, if you need a verification for that set information I just read to you, it's a bit lengthy. Berkeley News is the source. Thank you so much. And the first information was hrc.com. Well, you all have a great week. I'm going to check out of here. The set information is in the queue from the Dr. Phil show. That commentary that I played are clips from the show. And so I thank you all so very much. If you want to donate to the channel, $ Big Angie 129 Cash App. You all have a blessed week. And this is Everyday Shenanigans.